Just a quick heads up that this podcast will deal with distressing content, specifically around domestic violence. If you need any help, you can always contact 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732.
Zara, this is a really distressing story we're going to be speaking about today. Why don't we start with a high-level explanation of what exactly happened in Perth this week?
Sure. So at about 4:20 p.m. on Friday, a man entered a home in the Perth suburb of Floreat. And before I go on any further, just want to say from the outset that we'll refer to him either as the man, the perpetrator, the shooter, but not by his name. And that's just a choice the Daily Aus has made. So in the home that this man entered was 59-year-old Jennifer Pedalchick and her 18-year-old daughter, Gretel. Now, it's believed that the man was looking for his former partner, who was Jennifer's friend. The man, who was a licensed gun owner, proceeded to shoot both Jennifer and Gretel and then himself. He and Jennifer died at the scene and Gretel later died in hospital. His former partner was not at the home.
A really horrific incident. And since it's happened, we've actually heard from the shooter's daughter, right?
Yeah, so the shooter's daughter, Ariel Bombara, issued a video statement this week. And I must say, it was completely remarkable. In it, the young woman said that she, along with her mother, had fled her family home 2 months ago, quote, in fear of our lives and to remove ourselves from an abusive situation. So there she is talking about fleeing from the home that her father was occupying at the time.
Right.
She said that she alerted police to her father's dangerous behaviour multiple times prior to the incident that unfolded last Friday. And according to Ariel, she contacted police on 3 separate occasions. She said that she told police that she and her mother feared for their lives and that she flagged concern about her father's access to guns. And I'm going to go back to that in just a second. Her statement said that she applied for a temporary protective order against her father. So that was something that would have put in place a measure that had to protect them and had to keep him away, but that police rejected that specific request. Ariel said that she and her mother were repeatedly ignored and that they were failed, and that's a direct quote, by WA police, and that further actions could have prevented the murders of these 2 women we saw on Friday. I do just want to play out a bit of Ariel's statement now because it is just so moving and I cannot imagine what it has taken for her in the wake of such tragedy. You know, she has both lost 2 people that she knew, they were family friends, in an act of senseless violence. But in the same vein, her father is responsible for these deaths. So here are the words of Ariel.
We were ignored by 5 different male officers across 3 occasions of reporting. By that point, we felt completely helpless and I had to focus on getting Mum to safety. I did everything I could to protect my mother, and when my father couldn't find us, he murdered her best friend and her best friend's daughter.
It truly is a remarkable statement that she delivered. So she's basically alleging there that the police did not take appropriate action.
Yeah.
And that itself is a really serious issue and a really serious allegation.
Because, I mean, I think this is where a lot of anger is lying at the moment with these conversations, is that, you know, we're talking about investments in prevention and we're talking about all of these things. And yet we've seen now a number of incidents, whether it be about our bail laws or something else, about the way that things are happening and the way that processes are happening that aren't protecting women.
And so what has the response then been from WA Police?
So WA Police's Internal Investigations Unit has launched an investigation into these allegations, and that's in response to this specific video statement. It'll focus on the 3 interactions that Ariel highlighted that she had had with police and then the response that followed that. Yep. So here is a bit of WA Police Commissioner Cole Blanche talking about the investigation and what he's hoping will come of this investigation.
I want to reinforce that me as the Commissioner and our entire WA Police Force are extremely saddened by the tragic events of Friday. And if there's anything that we can do to improve the way we police going forward, the internal investigation will no doubt bore those details out.
Okay, so it's clear the police are going to investigate how those complaints were handled. But the other story here is about the access that the perpetrator had to guns, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we always think that here in Australia we don't have an issue with guns. And I think it is quite rare to be talking about guns in this sort of context.
Sure.
But the perpetrator owned 13 guns. So he owned 11 guns on a recreational gun license, and then he owned 2 handguns on a collector's license.
Hello, I'm James and I produced the video you're watching. If you're enjoying what you're watching, we'd love it if you considered subscribing and checking us out on our other platforms. It'd really help in getting the word out about what we're doing here at TDA. Thanks very much, and now back to the deep dive.
In her statement, Ariel said that she specifically told police about one of these weapons. It was a Glock handgun. And she says that she told police that that gun was unaccounted for.
Right.
And then she went on in that statement to suggest that that might have been the weapon that was used in this double murder.
Right.
Yeah, so this incident did unfold at the same time as a broader conversation about guns in the state had already been playing out. So in February of this year, the WA government proposed what they said would be the toughest gun laws in the country. Now, that legislation included limiting the number of guns that a person can own and imposing stricter licensing requirements. It also proposed introducing a mandatory health check for gun owners. So a lot of the sort of stuff we hear out of the US and what they've been trying to do around background checks and the like. The WA government has announced a review of the draft legislation in response to what we have seen occur after there were concerns raised about this shooting in particular. And in a presser following this incident, WA's Police Minister Paul Papalia, he really emphasised the importance of expanding police's ability to issue protective orders, particularly in situations involving firearms.
That's the order that Ariel said she applied for, right?
Yeah, so he described those current laws as inadequate, and he said that the shooter would have had fewer firearms if the draft laws had already passed. So, as I said, this is just proposed legislation. It had already been a conversation in the state, but it hadn't passed at the time that this incident occurred. It's obviously very difficult to know if anything would have turned out differently because we're talking only in hypotheticals. But that's certainly the line that the government is saying right now. I do just want to add that that legislation also proposed a ban on domestic violence offenders holding a firearm.
And that's an interesting point you raise. I mean, is this being treated as a domestic violence incident?
Well, the WA Premier earlier this week called it an incident motivated by domestic and family violence. So pretty clear language there. In doing so, he pointed to the $400 million his government has said it will spend on domestic violence prevention in the state.
We've spent a bit of time today talking through the WA government and WA police, but obviously this is a federal issue. This is a national issue. I mean, we've seen incidents.
It's an international issue.
True, all over the country. Have we heard from the federal government on this particular incident?
Yeah, well, we heard from Social Services Minister Amanda Rishworth, who told the ABC that it seems like Ariel didn't get the response that she needed from police. So that's her weighing in on what we have since learned. She described WA's police's investigation as important. And separately to that, an independent panel commissioned by the federal government separately met this week to identify best practice kind of prevention strategies to combat violence against women and children. As I said, it's been a national conversation. A bit of a personal link there that my brother is part of that panel and is helping to advise the government on how to move forward, that we keep having these conversations. There keep being commitments that something will change, but it appears that the strategy isn't working, as, you know, Billy put to the minister earlier this week. So really interested to see what the panel will come up with. It's due to submit its findings to the government later this year. But this latest incident in Perth is again highlighting the many facets that underpin family and domestic violence, and, you know, the way that gun laws and the way that the police interact with this. And certainly there is a lot of work yet to be done.
And just another reminder that if you need help, you can always contact 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732. We'll be back again tomorrow. Until then, have a good day.